Welcome everyone to this edition of the Pep Talk. My name is Addie Wagner and I'm the Sexual Assault Prevention Educator for Crisis Services of North Alabama. I love to partner with community organizations, and today with me I have Laura Calvert and she is the Youth Services Coordinator for Thrive Alabama. So would you like to take a second to introduce yourself and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Addie. So like she said, my name is Laura Calvert. I'm the Youth Services Coordinator at Thrive Alabama. So I provide HIV education, stigma education for our K through 12 grades. And we also do that for our college age group, in addition to some substance abuse education as well. Thrive Alabama is a community health center here. We have so many services that we offer to the community, often at a sliding scale fee. So what you can do, we can work with you. We offer primary care services. We treat people that are living with HIV. We offer pediatric services. So cradle to 18, 19 in Alabama. We have our wellness clinic that provides STI testing and free HIV testing. We have behavioral mental health services that we offer, and I'm in health education out here trying to help the community get our health together and more knowledge, more power.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys do a lot of wonderful stuff. And I know you and I tend to work together quite often, and we talk about consent and we talk about sex education in Alabama and what you guys offer and what we try to teach parents and children to help prevent sexual violence from happening. And one of the big things that I harp on a lot is, of course, consent. So, for your perspective as a youth services coordinator and someone who works with young folks, what is consent and how do you feel like it relates to sexual education?
So a lot of people, when they jump into consent, they're automatically thinking sex. No means no, yes means yes. But you kind of have to take it to like almost the textbook definition of it. Consent is the permission for something to happen or an agreement for something to do something, okay? So when we're talking to like our college age students, a lot of times consent does revolve around sex, but we also have to like start it a lot younger when we're talking to our younger, like our elementary school, about communication and permission. So when I'm talking with the older kids, definitely you guys have to communicate. When you're going into a situation, what are you going to allow? What are you not going to allow? What is okay for you and your partner? For me, with sexual education, it often revolves around condom negotiation, talking about safe sex. Since I'm talking about HIV education and prevention, we got to keep us safe. How are we going to prevent us from catching HIV? How are we going to prevent ourselves from spreading it? So that consent. I'm going to use a condom. I will only allow you to have sex with me if you're using a condom. I'm giving you permission to do these things only if. So being able to communicate, very big. And that's where we're going to start with our consent.
Yeah, those are really important concepts, and I appreciate that you talked about specifically condom use because in the context of healthy relationships and preventing sexual dating violence, one of the things that's come up a lot is stealthing, the removal of a condom without the partner's consent. And so I think it's so important that we do communicate proper condom use and empowering individuals who are engaging in sexual activity to say, no, we're using a condom every time. And if we don't, then we're not having sex. And you touched also on talking to different age groups. Consent doesn't just involve sexual situations. We got to talk to our kids young of, they don't necessarily have to sit on Uncle so-and-so's lap. Or if somebody demands a hug and a kiss, they don't necessarily have to oblige them. So yeah, all of that is incredibly important to the
And
conversation.
that's up to us as parents to give our kids that autonomy. So if my son says, no, I'm not going to hug them, and they try to, oh, you don't love auntie such and such. No, he didn't say any of that. He just doesn't want to be touched right now. Maybe he'll give you a smile, an air high five or something. But like, we have to advocate and show our kids that, hey, no, you have the ability to consent, to not consent. So start them young, start them young.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you said something about bodily autonomy. And how do you think teaching bodily autonomy is important to preventing sexual violence and interpersonal violence? Do you feel like those are connected?
Oh, absolutely. So I had to do a little research because I know this is your forte. And I learned that about 90% of like child abuse and sexual assault on like our youth happens by family members or somebody that the kid knows or somebody that the family knows. So you absolutely have to start young. And like you just said, if your kid doesn't want to hug somebody, don't force them. Don't try and guilt them because then because that'll show them if you have a young child and they don't want to give auntie such and such a hug, and auntie such and such goes, oh, you don't love me, you don't want to give me a hug, and then they feel bad and they're like, okay, well, I have to give them a hug. What happens when they're 16, 17, and some boy or some girl says, oh, you don't want to touch me or let me touch you because you don't like me, and then they feel bad. So you're setting these examples up now. You have to show them that their choice is their choice. What we start young and now will really set our kids up further along the line. So like talking about consent, communication, that whole bodily autonomy, we start them young. So if your kid doesn't want to play a game, I know we really want our kids to be social and have like all these really great relationships, but if they don't want to play with such and such, you feel guilty and like, oh, well, it looks bad. No, you have to like let them know, hey, I support you. You don't want to do this right now, maybe later. So later down the line, when they're making choices about maybe sex or doing drugs, they're not going to feel guilty. They're going to be like, I'm confident in the choice that I made. We're not going to do this. Done. And then you're like, oh, did a great job as a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it is good parenting. Another thing that comes up, especially in the work that I do in my organization, is talking about proper body names. You know, a lot of times we hear hoo-ha or cookie or some other slang term to refer to genitalia. And I'm a big proponent of using proper terminology because of the things that we see in the work that we do. What are your thoughts?
This is one of my favorite topics because I think it's a little bit controversial, but it's totally not. I wear a pin on my lanyard at work that one of my friends from the Children's Advocacy Center says, and it says, penis and vagina are not bad words. They're not. Those are just like the actual words for it. When I'm in schools, of course, like you have this stranger coming in and I'm like, hey, we're going to be talking. We're going to be using words like penis and vagina. The middle school kids, like, yes, they start giggling. With the younger kids, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you 3 seconds to laugh. I want you to get all these giggles out, but we're going to be using, I call them my good science words because that's exactly what they are. That's just the biology terms. There's nothing weird about it. So like, I'm using them consistently. I don't ever stop using them. And then it normalizes it for the group that I'm using it with. Like they're still sometimes a little uncomfortable to say it back when they ask questions, but I always tell them, use the words you have. I'll correct you if it's wrong. Definitely correct you if it's inappropriate because there's some words that I'm like, oh, we're not using these in a school setting. But I understand it's uncomfortable, but they have to practice. Mm-hmm. But when we're not using these appropriate words, it can be really, really dangerous. If a little girl is being sexually abused and she doesn't know that what she has is a vagina or a vulva, and she's saying, she goes to a teacher, a trusted adult, and she says, Uncle such and such touched my cookie. He took my cookie, or some people like touched my cat or something. You're gonna be like, okay, well, you need to learn how to share. Let them, like, it's fine. You're just, sometimes if you have tons of kids in your presence, you're just gonna be like, yeah, okay. But if a small kid comes to you and says, Uncle such and such touched my vagina, Uncle such and such touched my vulva, red alerts, we're stopping what we're doing. We are getting that help. So we have to be the ones that empower our kids, our youth, to have this proper language, to use this proper language, or a lot of stuff can slide under the radar. I'm a mom, and when I'm changing my son, like, and we're talking about diaper changes, I so want to say, oh, we're cleaning the little pee-pee. Like, I want to use words like that. He's a baby. It's cute. But like, I catch myself and I'm like, your penis, because you're a boy and that's what you have. I know you're only 4 months old and you're still saying "ga," but one day I'm going to need you to say these words in case you need to communicate something with me. So like, even if you slip up, catch yourself, repeat it, let them use those words. Don't make it, oh, you said this word type thing. Just keep using it, keep reinforcing it, so they have the tools to keep them safe and protect themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Another question that comes up a lot, and I think this is especially important for high school aged students and parents of high school age students, is the discussion of contraception methods part of healthy sexuality, and do you feel like that would contribute to healthier relationships for teens?
Yes. Our kids sometimes get really confused and they don't always have accurate sources of information.
Mm.
When I'm talking to my high school groups and my middle school groups, a lot of their information comes from "I heard" and "they said" and "my cousin told me." Imaginary people that have not factual information. And they're telling me, I could tell you stories of contraceptive methods that kids have told me are okay. Using socks. If you put dish soap into your vagina will keep you safe and healthy. Just like completely off the wall things. And so those aren't actual contraceptive methods, first off. So it's a little bit scary that that's what they think it is. But if we teach them that these methods, one, it will empower them. I often in Alabama state schools, you are only allowed to teach abstinent-only education,
Mm-hmm.
which I think abstinence is a 100% great way to prevent any kind of STIs, pregnancy. But I also acknowledge that we are human, we are emotional, we are hormonal, we have urges, so other things are going to happen. So when I'm talking about contraceptive methods in schools, we can talk about condoms. I don't often talk about birth control because I'm usually focused on HIV education. But when I'm talking about condoms, I often hear girls say, I don't need to know this. I don't need to know this. And I'm like, okay. So we always do this activity called the condom lineup, and they put the steps to properly put condoms on. And as we're doing it, it's never right. And so they're in all this crazy order, and we're correcting it together and talking through it. And afterwards, whenever there's like a group of girls that say, oh, I don't know how to do this, I'm like, so you saw all of those boys that just put this in order? You're going to trust that? And they're like, no, you're right, Miss Laura. We're going to learn that too. So when women and girls are able to feel in control and feel empowered, be like, oh, you're putting that on wrong. No, this isn't how that works. That's going to keep them safe and hopefully prevent sexual assault. If there's a stealthing scenario going on, they're going to be able to, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't look right. No, this isn't okay. And same for boys. If they don't know like the proper way to put on a condom, if they think they can use other methods, like maybe pull out because that's what a girl told them, I need them to also be empowered and be like, hey, no, I know how to use this correctly and I'm going to use this correctly because this is what we talked about. And also, I don't feel comfortable. Because a lot of times people put it, oh, it's always the boys. They just always want to X, Y, and Z. No, they're just as young, just as innocent and sweet, and they need this education to also feel empowered.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And girls and boys, they need to know what to look for on a condom wrapper, if somebody's poked a hole in the condom, or, somebody's got a few extra pills in their case of birth control. Because reproductive coercion and sexual coercion are parts of unhealthy relationships. So oftentimes birth control methods can be used as a method of control. So yeah, if you know what a condom is supposed to look like and it's not supposed to have a hole or be dried out, then you're a little bit more empowered to make conscientious decisions for your body.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think that when young folks are educated about contraception use, their bodies, just sex in general, that they're more likely to engage in sexual behavior?
So I've always heard that rumor. My parents perpetuated that rumor that I didn't need to know about this stuff unless I was going to do it, or I didn't need to take birth control because are you having sex? First off, a lot of people take birth control for other health issues. So just always put that out there. So I did the research. There's actually consistent research going back to the 1970s to show that there is no correlation between sex education and increased sexual behavior or risky behavior. None. Not at all. No correlation, no causation, none of that stuff. And I think people get tripped up when we talk about sex education. It's like, oh, sex, I'm talking about doing it. People are having no. Sex education includes our sexual organs, our vaginas, our vulvas, our penises, our anuses. Like, we're talking about how those are developing, how those are changing, navigating relationships that we're having, whether they're familiar relationships, friendship, romantic relationships, how to develop these personal skills like communication, decision making, in addition to teaching them how to manage their sexual behaviors, which abstinence is a sexual behavior, okay? Choosing to have sex is a sexual behavior. We have to give kids all of this knowledge and all this education so they can make their choices. And I fully say that knowing that 13-year-olds aren't making probably the best choices. But if you're going to be a responsible adult in their lives, whether it's a parent, big sister, auntie, just like they're adult, you got to give them all of the information. Kids are so smart. We know they're smart. I think we want to pretend they're not. But when they have all of that information, they're able to make those choices for themselves. And with your guidance, like saying, hey, what you're doing is normal. You have these feelings. Let's acknowledge them. Let's talk about them. Let's learn how to do this safely. Let's learn how to keep ourselves safe, healthy, all of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Thank you. And I appreciate your research-minded approach to everything, because I mean, it is important to the conversation that we do know what the science says, and helps to dispel those myths, especially for parents who have, children who are coming of age. They're experiencing puberty and, learning about their bodies and perhaps other people's bodies.
Scary for everybody. Let's just go ahead and acknowledge that. That's so wild for the people going through it, the people watching people go through it. So we just have to be like, let's do some research. Let's find some information. Let's talk about this. Even though our kids aren't going to want to talk all the time, just here's some pamphlets, here's some websites, some Instagram pages, that type of deal. Is every little bit.
So for parents that may be interested in learning a little bit more, who should they reach out to, and should they reach out to the folks at Thrive to help them with that?
Oh, absolutely. We'll include my email address in the description. I have so many sources. This is one of my favorite things to do, is to figure out how to talk to our kids, how to reach them best. So I have a lot of really great links. We have tons of pamphlets that we can figure out how to no contact deliver with all of this COVID going on. But absolutely. One website that I always recommend is amaze.org. They have so many cool videos. They're YouTube videos. Some of them are really short, but they have them for parents and they have them for our youth.
Oh, okay.
It ranges from talking about puberty, talking about sexual orientation, talking about health. It runs a gambit of sexual health, LGBTQ, consent, health, all of that stuff. And it's really easy to understand. They're marked by age range. They're marked by topic. So at all ages for your kids, for yourself, if your kid comes to you and says something that you're just like, what? You can go learn some stuff there for yourself, and then also bring it back to them and start a discussion.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, that's awesome. I think we'll wrap up this edition of the Pep Talk. Laura, thank you so much for tuning in and talking with me today. This has been some really useful information.
I'm glad to have been here.